and welcome to Code to Cloud. I'm your host, as always, Kevin Evans, and today I've got a special guest. I have got the one and only Dwayne Natwick. Dwayne, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks, Kevin. Great to be here. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Well, I've been following Dwayne for a few years. He must be the most accredited security professional that I've seen on LinkedIn. He's got a lot of letters after his name. He writes some amazing blogs. You've done a lot of presentations in the past, that kind of thing. I know you've just recently started a venture because you've also got an alias. People might know you on the streets as someone else. Do you want to talk to us about that, right?
Yeah, so I took the brand that I had been using for blogging and things, which is Captain Hyperscaler, and decided to go out on my own. Decided initially it was more freelance training, freelance trainer for other learning partners, but that has evolved after the first quarter really to be really be its own provider of cybersecurity, cloud security, and cloud transformation education, and really taking the Captain Hyperscaler superhero. I don't know if you see the logo on my shirt. To another level of really doing a white glove approach to training through what we call origin stories and hero sagas. So we have heroes for all of the the blue team, purple team, red team type trainings, as well as if you're looking for some help around cloud transformation, around secure development, securing applications or governance, risk, and compliance. We have a hero saga for you, and we'll customize it to whatever your needs are.
That's awesome. I also hear you have a podcast as well, right?
I do. I always enjoy having a podcast going, and I was doing one when I was with my previous company, and one of the first things I did when I went out on my own was start formulating a plan for my own, which is called Skill Up Like a Superhero, which ultimately has become kind of our trademark brand of what we do in terms of delivering our training as well. We want to skill you up, with those hero sagas, skill you up like a superhero. And so I do a podcast, generally comes out every Thursday at 9 Eastern time, is premiered every week. And I have somebody from the community, somebody from whether it's Microsoft or AWS or cyber security, come on and talk about the benefits of certifications and training, and how you can leverage those to expand your career or change your career. So it's really twofold. It's understanding certifications, understanding how they can be used. I just recorded one with somebody today where we talked about tips and tricks about becoming certified, but also the benefits and how you can use it to expand your career as well.
That's awesome. I've just recorded a cloud career roadmap playlist, right, for the channel, and I just did certifications, right, and how they serve you and why you have to do them, right. But go and check out Dwayne's podcast. I feel like you'll get a lot out of it. I know I have a lot of graduates and students that follow this channel, right, so they're still trying to figure things out, which way to go and all that kind of stuff. It's going to get some great insights by the sounds of things, right?
Yeah, and the podcast that just premiered yesterday is actually with somebody that I know through Microsoft's MSSA program, which is their program for developing military people that are exiting the military and going out in the real world and transitioning to and want to transition to a technical role. And we talked about those operational skills and really those soft skills that you might need to stand out and kind of tell how to stand out with your resume, in an interview, and within the screening process, and all of those things too. So it's not just about tech all the time.
I'm really glad you said it, because I actually did an actual episode on soft skills, right? So you're validating I was doing the right thing and saying the right things, which is good to hear. And I was in the military myself, So transitioning out of that environment to civilian world, right?
Mm-hmm.
There are some things you need to definitely take into consideration, right? So
Right.
executing is not a problem. It's more about how do you operate, right? How do you present yourself, that kind of thing, right? So yeah,
Exactly.
that sounds amazing, man. But yeah, um, as people will know, um, I've held multiple security positions in the past. Um, I try to run away from security roles, but I always end up doing them. I don't know what it is, but a big thing for me is trying to secure the patterns we use when we deploy to your hyperscaler of choice, right? Mine's always obviously
Mm-hmm.
going to be Azure, right? But platform engineering, right, is something that I'm really talking about. And how do we introduce security into the development lifecycle? So not only, you know, we create, when I talk about developers now, that could be infrastructure folks, that could be your run of the mill developer, like front end, back end, right, or a DBA, but
Mm-hmm.
also security folks now, right? I also have to learn some sort of programmatic language, right? And when you're deploying infrastructure, you got to deploy it in a secure way. So
Exactly.
I know you've got this subject today, which I'm pretty happy about, but it's securing the development application development lifecycle, right? Which is there are a few versions of this on the internet. I know Microsoft's one is very extensive, so if you, if you ever want to read something that's quite large, right, quite deep, like you knock yourself out, right? But yeah, do you want to just talk about just give us a bit of an overview about what we're going to talk about today?
Yeah,
Because I feel like this
I'm
is
gonna give
important.
like a really I'm gonna give really a high level. I think what it was topical to to the essence of your of this webcast and and really around securing code and things of that nature. I talk about this a lot, and I've had this conversation. I'm sure you have as well about when and we were talking offline where I was like, I don't like the term DevSecOps, and I know from talking to developers they don't like the term DevSecOps because they're you're throwing it's kind of like you got peanut butter in my chocolate, the old Reese's peanut butter cup commercials. Don't get your peanut butter out of my chocolate. You got your chocolate in my peanut butter. Keep security out of my DevOps because I'm already developing secure code and you're not going to tell me how to do that. And so I've had to, as somebody that is trying to teach and to train people in cloud security or in cybersecurity, and as we move and try to be more cloud native, like you said, moving applications, being code based in containers and in serverless infrastructures and things of that nature. There, it's always where how do we enforce having security within the process and within the development. And one of the key things that I kind of think about when I do that is everybody should be thinking and be within an organization, be risk aware and understand risk. And so I do a lot of talks and talk a lot about risk awareness and becoming a risk aware organization. And if you're a risk aware organization, security in the application development process should hopefully be somewhat second nature. But the problem is that there aren't enough organizations that have gotten to that maturity level, and that's really what it comes down to. And so just kind of give kind of a quick overview and just really a few slides. I'm not going to really slide where this whole conversation, but when we think about it, like I said, we need to have and think about incorporating security features and practices into everything that we do from the entire development lifecycle. And that's really what secure application development is, or DevSecOps if we want to go down that route and brand it for the masses. Have the
Gartner might be
have
on the
the
call.
have the proper hashtag, hashtag DevSecOps, right? But why do the key things is what do we need and why do we need it? And it's obviously we're making our code more available and more more in the forefront as we get more cloud native, because we're using repositories, we're using we're using container registries and all of those things to pull, to essentially present our applications. It's not embedded on an operating system anymore
No.
for the most part, and it's so so that whole approach of, oh, we're just going to harden the operating system, it's all fine and good, or like we were talking about before we went live, it's not all in a data center that we can secure the perimeter and make sure we have all of these firewalls and these intrusion detection and prevention systems in place, or things like that. So we need to make sure that we're securing that code, we're evaluating that code properly for security, and we're avoiding those common threats. And these are some of those common threats that we know around applications. If somebody's able to to do injection attacks on our SQL databases and on our databases to compromise the integrity of our data, redirecting and doing falsified scripting on our web applications are all things. And the key to the two bottom ones here are kind of the ones that I focus on a lot when you're thinking about security in the development process is making sure that we're not misconfiguring our code and our applications, and that we're classifying our data properly to avoid exposure. And that's and nothing. Any talk that I do and any conversation I always have is it's always at the beginning that we need to take all of this into account. It's like I said, if it's identifying risk, it's assessing risk, it's also planning for potential attacks. And so, knowing where our sensitive data is, what it is, and classifying that properly. If we don't do that at the beginning, we don't know what we're protecting throughout the rest of the development, the rest of the life cycle as well. And, this is just really quick on the OWASP top 10. Anybody listening can go out to, OWASP.org, for slash top 10 and find the OWASP top 10 types of web attacks. But many of them are the ones that were listed on the previous slide. And when we're kind of taking that to the next level of some of the techniques that we might use, and we can talk more about this as well, is again, we know where our sensitive data is, we classify that data, but then we make sure that there's proper access control techniques in place. The input validation helps against those injection attacks. The output encoding helps against those cross-site scripting type of attacks, and making sure that we're avoiding anybody kind of spoofing our code or redirecting proper users. And obviously, a key to protecting data and information is always going to be to encrypt, to maintain confidentiality, and hash that information to make sure that we know that that has a proper integrity as well. And then around understanding requirements, taking those requirements, and then really thinking of the design principles, and making sure we're using defense in depth principles of least privilege, separation of duties to make sure that people don't have too much access to information, or there's that that dual key kind of thing. We were talking about spy movies before, having a person with each key, rather than having one person with the nuclear codes. Going back to our Cold War discussion we were having before we went live. But those are all all things we need to think about. The fail secure, defense in depth, and you could put zero trust in here. Again, that's another one of those buzzword terms, where and to me, zero trust is nothing more than defense in depth 2.0. For the most part, it's just not having a single approach, obviously, towards security, and that becomes ultimately important. And so all of these principles in terms of design should be inherent to our organizational culture, and really not just to application development, but across all means of how our data flows and how our data is used. But like I said, it's becoming more and more a product or a methodology that we need to apply to the development lifecycle of an application. And that's really ultimately kind of what we're talking about when we're talking about, all of our, our secure application what secure application development is, and applying it to whatever our application development process is, making sure it's up in the front at the planning and design stage all the way through to, through development, implementation, execution, and then monitoring. We should have security elements embedded into all of that. And that's really ultimately what we're talking about when we say secure application development. And it's just taking those principles that we've always applied to protecting a data center, or protecting a device, or protecting our virtual networks, to an application that's more web based, that's more public facing than what it has been in the past. And that's ultimately the goal that we're looking at. And that's, I'll end the kind of the slide aspect of things there, rather than going much further. Like I said, I could talk, I'm developing a course right now around these actual concepts and everything, and really, in terms of 14 hours worth of content. So I could talk a while on this if we wanted to, but we're trying to keep it within, half hour, 40 minutes. So I'll stop presenting, and we can then chat a little bit, Kevin.
Yeah, I mean, let's just talk about this, for instance, right?
Yeah, sure.
Because you were right in what you're saying. I have this conversation a lot, right, with customers. Is they're actually working within sprints and development life cycles, right? Infrastructure's there now, right? The developers are speaking to infrastructure, and infrastructure is speaking to the developers. Believe it or not,
that's a good step. That's a good step.
It's a good step, right? And the infrastructure folks know how to use an IDE and write basic code, right? Either be PowerShell, Bash, Terraform, Bicep, name your poison, right?
Yep.
To supply services to the developers. Because the developers, all they want to know is where they can run their code.
Well, you got Copilot now too, right? Not to mention Copilots.
There's a Copilot for everything, right? So,
exactly.
Do you remember the saying? There's an app for that.
Yeah,
there'll be
exactly.
a Copilot. There's going to be a Copilot,
for that,
right? So that's definitely the way. And I had in the last session we did security for DevOps. We had the PM on, right? We had them on, and we went through the bits and pieces. But one thing I'm advising customers is like, well, where's security? You've got dev and infrastructure speaking to each other, right? Or operations. People call it operations, right? So where's security? And they go, well, they turn up and validate the patterns later on. And it's like, no, you need to get them at the beginning. And guess what? They need to understand the tools that operations and developers are using, and actually be part of the process and the conversation up front. So you actually add that time in for whatever it is you're trying to release, right? Because it's normally added on at the end. And then when you've got to do remediation, or like they discover something that needs to be secured, or like you said, like they used to focus on the operating system version or whatever, right? The controls that were applied to it. They make a recommendation for it to be applied, and it breaks everything, right? It shuts something off, or something happens.
Right.
So having them at the beginning of that journey is really going to help, right? Just sort of build it right. I mean, no one wakes up and goes, I'm going to build this insecurely, or I'm going to build this in a bad way. I mean, some of my experience may differ from that, but it's people don't naturally go away and do that, right? So having the right expertise around the table at the beginning is going to help you out, during the process.
Yeah, and around that additionally too is is having the information owners around the table, so
Yeah.
that they know, so that what kind of, what we have in terms of data classification that needs to be in place. Where's our sensitive data, and is that sensitive data going to be on that system or accessed through that application? The making sure the business is involved in that conversation, as well as the users, so that the experience is there. And one of the things that I've had people say, where I'm like, it's got to be at the beginning. You got to address risk at the beginning for this application, then security will flow. And then I've had the devil's advocate kind of person on that go, well, the problem is that the business wants this app to be online now,
Yeah.
and it's because
The realism,
and
right? Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, the realism of it. Well, that's where the hard conversation has to come to the business and those executives that are saying, I need this now, and say, okay, well, you need this now, but what happens if all of your customer data is compromised because you're not putting security in place, or are you addressing all of your risks? So there's that balancing act between the business requirements and getting this app online versus the risk to the business and the business case. And you have to build a case that says, if we don't put security properly in place for this, your app's going to be turned off in 30 seconds anyway. So
It's a common thing, right? It's like, or you don't want to stifle innovation either. It's trying to
yeah.
find this happy medium, right? Where it's every day's just school day, because you can introduce new practices all the time. It's just how you approach them, right? And as long as security is one of those pillars, we talk about the well-architected framework right here at Microsoft, and it's like, we'll keep that in mind, but again, it's managing business expectations. Like, I've had the same conversations where I'm like, so where are your crown jewels? And they always go, the domain controllers. And I go, maybe, but where's your data? Right? Because I said that's what they're after. The domain controllers. Hopefully, you're not using domain controllers. Right? But if you are, because there'll be a reason. Just provide the access, right? To whatever services you've got, right? That's your authentication method. So where is your data? How have you got that structured? Simple things like, are your backups secure?
Yep.
We never thought about that. Well, what happens if they get your data and then lock you out of your backups? How are you going to restore? When was the last time you did a restore drill? What's one of those?
Right.
That's normally what comes after that, right? And I can start to see the cogs turning,
that's the whole,
right? Yeah.
That's that whole conversation of the CIA triad, right? And that's the availability one that gets forgotten about when it comes to security. And a lot of times, that resiliency, that that, like you said, the backups, the ability, the business continuity aspect of things, because once you start talking into that, a lot of organizations are going to start seeing dollar signs, right? Because we're duplicating resources.
Turn it on, right?
Yeah. You're duplicating resources and things like that. That's one of the things I really love about Azure, and like things like Azure Site Recovery and Azure Backup and things like that, because when it back a few years ago, when everybody was we were trying to decide, as when I was in a managed service provider, as how do we get customers to move to the cloud. Backup and recovery was like driver number one. Websites, your public facing websites, and backup and disaster recovery techniques were option A and option B of really easy ways to start adopting the cloud, because it's less expensive than renting another data center and a whole bunch more equipment to have a warm site available to you.
I agree, right? And again, you talk about dollar signs. It's like, well, do you know what assets you've got? And those become more clear in the cloud, right? Because there's a charge associated with it, right? People start taking more notice. Whereas on premise, we'd have bought a server, raised a PO, racked it, stacked it, bang, right? Just presented it to someone to access. But then also, what needs to be backed up? How do you segregate those resources, right? You know, like
Mm-hmm.
you mentioned encryption and stuff like that. I mean, everything should be encrypted, but it's understand how that works. And I just wanted to circle back because part of the high availability, and this is a conversation that I'm having quite a lot lately, is customers are doing a pretty good job of having backup or high availability or using ASR, right, in Azure, for example. And again, like you said, Dwayne, like we can pick a data center anywhere in the world now, right? And just
Mm-hmm.
replicate across. But then it's like, well, that's one method. We'll say that you are a cloud native house and you're using source control, GitOps, Git platforms, whatever you want to call them, right? So GitHub, Azure DevOps, I know there's others, right? But
Mm-hmm.
are you secure on those platforms?
Right.
And then, you know, and then they go, well, what do you mean? Our developers use that. I go, well, imagine it's like SharePoint for developers, right? And then
That's a good
that's
analogy.
normally, yeah, right. And then the penny goes
Right.
dink right in the head, and they go, yeah, we put a lot of stuff in SharePoint, right? Like kind of thing. And it's like, well, so imagine you've got this platform with source control, with blueprints. Terraform's a great one for this. State
Mm-hmm.
files. Bad actor gets that state file. Thank you very much. You give me a blueprint to your environment, right? That kind of
Mm-hmm.
thing. How are you protecting those? If you had to do a restore because you banked on everything to be restored as infrastructure as a code, how are you protecting those assets? What kind of
Right.
security controls have you got there, right? And I'm just wondering, have you seen anything like that, right? How maybe what your experiences of around that are at all, or any advice you might have?
Um, I don't have any firsthand experience around it, but you bring up a valid point, and that's really where that goes back to that separation of duties. I think a little
Yeah,
bit as well as having proper access controls in place, because I think that identity is the new perimeter and all of that, right?
exactly.
Is
Yeah,
is really where that's going to come in, to protect those secrets, protect that infrastructure as code, protect those repositories, and then protect the the access to them through principles of least privileged, things like just in time access to those resources, having multi-factor authentication to it, or even just some sort of private key that makes sure that we and tracking it, right? I mean, which is one of the things that like Microsoft Defender for Cloud does with their developer security, part of their Defender plans, is help to turn on like that GitHub Advanced Security and manage the secrets, manage the access to that repo, not necessarily manage the code or protect the code today, but at least manage the access, which is the best first step, is managing that access. Then you've got to figure out a way, obviously, to manage, to make sure that code doesn't get compromised. And those are, obviously there, there's ways that you can, within like GitHub, any one of the, anytime you do any kind of commit to that, there's essentially kind of a version control or a hash that's kind of created around that, so you can kind of hopefully protect yourself from that taking place. But hopefully, I would love to see, and I just was talking to one of the Microsoft Defender for Cloud product managers just a couple weeks ago about, what are things that they need in Defender for Cloud. And that was number one, was how do we protect our code? We can protect the access to it, but how do we where's that other layer? Where's that defense in depth within code repositories at this point? Which, like you said, I don't think, there's not that golden goose necessarily yet to that.
no, it's it's like something that I can draw down on my own experience. Like protecting repos, access control, simple things like once I built a pipeline that changed the firewall rules on Azure Firewall Manager, right? So what stops somebody from compromising the Git platform, right? GitHub,
Mm-hmm.
creating themselves a nice little backdoor somewhere, right?
Right.
And passes all the tests, all the validation tests, because the code was absolutely top grade, right? So it goes through all
Right.
the automated tests, but it's like, well, where's the, like you said, the two key approach: peer reviews, branch policies, right? Um, Understanding how that works, right? You know, and I think you made a point earlier about people using public repositories to grab
Yeah.
images for containers and stuff like that, right? It's, by the way, I know they serve a purpose and a great place to start, but you shouldn't be using public repositories if it's all possible. I know nobody wants to compile their own Linux operating system, right? But try and get one that's verified and validated, right?
Yeah.
And then build on it from there, right? Because you know it's, again, you might not have the knowledge, so trying to use tools that are going to help you, right, or get educated with one of Dwayne's courses, right, is um is going to help you, right, go, actually we probably need to check on that, right, or we probably need to implement this. I don't see too many people now that don't use MFA, but
Right.
I as a side note, I literally got one of those, is it a YubiKey,
Okay.
and
Mm-hmm.
I should have had one, right, because it's something I just recommend all the time. The first instruction is, they said to me, was, now that you've purchased this, please go and purchase another one so you can back your keys up. Because if you lose access to this, then you won't be able to get back
That's a
in.
good point.
I was just like, I was really excited, right, of getting it set up, right? Because I'm showing my kids,
Mm-hmm.
look, it goes into my phone, look at it, I look like someone out of Mission Impossible, right? It looks really cool. The first thing is I need to go spend another $80, right, to buy another one, just in
Have
case
it.
that one doesn't
You have resiliency in your YubiKeys. I
work.
never thought about that. I haven't used those. You know, at my previous company, they had a PKI
Right.
card, I used that, and yeah, never thought about the fact that I didn't have, if I lost that card, I had no access to my laptop.
It's the same as, do you know the concept of break glass accounts in Azure,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
right?
Yep.
We say use a hardware token, don't use MFA, right?
Right.
Um, and for people that don't know what break glass account is, and this probably will never happen, but just in case it does, right? If MFA service went down, right, from a Microsoft point of view, and I'll be quite honest, if it went down, the whole world would probably be jumping up and down, right? Um, how'd you get back in? And again, it comes back to those
Mm-hmm.
drills, right? Like just test your processes, test, because there's nothing worse when trying to do it when you're trying to put the fire out, right? Or all hands at the pump and everything. So
It's that it's
yeah,
third bullet here, fail securely. You know, if MFA went down, you're failed secure.
you can't get in.
Unless you have, you
It's
can't get in unless you got, unless you got, like you said, some sort of token or a key to use. Yeah, and I tried to, we're all trying to, right, get away from, kind of the social engineering that comes along with MFA too,
oh
through,
yeah,
like you said, like things like YubiKey or a privacy token, or I know a pass key. I know I'm getting prompted a lot on a lot of sites now, rather than using a push to get a pass key for a particular site or something like that now, to kind of get away from, get more secure, because now we've got something much more tangible, than somebody, but still, you still are always, and going back to kind of that risk aware organization, even if you have MFA in place or all types of security in place for access controls and things, there you need to still have your people in your organization aware of what your policies and procedures and standards are, and also understand that there are bad actors out there that are going to try and circumvent that. Just the other day, I got an email that somebody tried to access my LinkedIn account in the middle of the night. I'm like, why is somebody trying to gain access to my LinkedIn account? Why are you trying to compromise my LinkedIn? but people are bored and trying to do things. Just, it goes back to your conversation of somebody making a statement of, oh, why would anybody want to hack this company? Well,
Yeah. That was a famous line from one of my chairmans, right? So yeah.
I mean, why would anybody want to get into my LinkedIn account? What, they want to
why are they
change my
interested in
certifications?
me? Yeah, why are they interested in me?
Interested in me? But I got a notification of it. I've got MFA, so I just did nothing about it. Just let it rest. Nothing major around that. Somebody tries to access my Microsoft account. Go ahead. I'm going to be notified about it, and I just am not going to hit the yes, it's me in the authenticator app. Those are just simple things that I need to be aware of that other people, some other people aren't necessarily aware of. I am constantly having conversations with my wife about the importance of multi-factor authentication, because she feels it's just a pain in the butt to her. So.
Well, when I was showing off the YubiKey, that was the first thing she said. You're going to make me have one of those, aren't you? That's that was the. She goes, I don't even have a key ring. What happens if I lose it? She was like, and I was like, yes. These are all the common. Like, why do I need it? Right? Like, I just press and it works, right? Like, so. And to be quite honest, she's pretty good. But you're right. I think that's something else that gets lost in translation is for folks like me and you, we sort of go, okay, we'll do it because it's the right thing to do, right? Or it's going to make us more secure but I think, and then this is what I talked about all to IT people all the time. We don't get up in the morning to build things for the sake of it. Maybe at the weekends, right? In our home labs.
Right.
But normally it's to serve a purpose, right? And you've just got to remember about the person at the other end, right? So if you introduce all this complexity, you've heard this one a million times before, Dwayne, right? It actually becomes a bit of a more of a problem because people start to figure out how to circumvent it, or you're slowing productivity down, right? That kind of thing. And that's where you don't want pushback from the business as well, right? It's a hard act to sort of do, but
it's a balancing act between what the business needs, and as security practitioners, we've got to I think it's to a certain degree a build a business case that scares the business so that
fear-mongering.
So it's mandated, right?
They're already inside. Sign the check. Sign the check. Oh God. Yeah. It's don't do that. Don't do that.
No, not necessarily scare them, but at least let them know the risks. Let them know the risks. I get what you're saying. We're not going to say they're already inside, or they're at the gates.
They're at the gates. If you don't buy this firewall, that'll be it. Right. So, but it's been great having you on. Have you got any parting words of wisdom? What are like the top 3 things you recommend people to do? Right.
The top 3 things is just know the risk, understand the objectives of the business, and really what is important to the business from a standpoint of where, especially when it comes to things like customer data, personal identifiable information are going to be very key aspects. What is your information within your business, and what is sensitive and something that's going to create either reputational or business damage to your organization? What is at risk if you don't take protecting that seriously. And that's really when you're thinking about building a business case and making sure that you're kind of putting security in the design and planning aspects of things, is really that. I mean, that's going to be what really is going to be what's going to stick with the business. It's not, if you're building an application that's going to be revenue generating, okay, well, you're going to have customer data in there. You're probably going to have customer bank account or buying information. So you have to make sure that you're protecting that. So you need to put security, that's going to be a driver for security by design. And that's really what we're talking about when we're talking about secure app development, is decreasing the level of risk when that application goes live, and then monitoring for that risk going forward. And that's kind of, I guess, kind of the key takeaway I would give everybody.
That's awesome. So wrap things up. Now, you already mentioned that you're on LinkedIn, right? Because someone tried to hack into it. But where can folks find you, right?
Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm very active there under my personal name. I'm active on X or Twitter as
It's Twitter.
Dwayne.
It's Twitter.
Twitter, yeah, as Dwayne N Cloud. So you can find me there. Captain Hyperscaler just started an Instagram account as part of my. It was one of my daughter is my communication specialist and social media consultant. So and all the businesses have Instagram accounts. So I needed to make an Instagram account. So Captain Hyperscaler has an Instagram account, so you can follow Captain Hyperscaler on Instagram. We also have a company. Captain Hyperscaler also has a company LinkedIn. So I'm generally posts will come from Captain Hyperscaler or from me. And then captainhyperscaler.com, you can find out more about the business, about the training that we provide around cybersecurity, cloud security, and cloud transformation, so everybody can skill up like a superhero.
That's awesome. Well, thank you very much for coming on. Lots of information there. I like the fact that we nerded it out, but we added some humor. I think there should be more humor in cybersecurity, right? Because it's really serious conversation, right? All the time.
It's pretty serious and dry, right?
Yeah, it's really
try to make it happen. And that's kind of what we, as we started down the path of being a learning provider on our own, rather than me just being a freelancer. Like I said, my daughter came up with this really cool comic strip like story for Instagram that ended with, skill up like a superhero, contact us to develop your origin story. And I'm like, that's a really cool way of looking at it. And so we can geek out, we can still superhero out like we want to do. And we can still learn a little bit about security all in the process. So that's why we have our hero saga aspect to our training paths.
That's awesome. Well, thanks again for coming on. Thanks to everybody that's watched the episode today. Again, if you like what you're seeing, feedback, give me a thumbs up, like, subscribe, share, and repeat. You can also find me on LinkedIn, on the normal socials, and on X. I need to get an Instagram account. My daughter would say exactly the same thing, Dwayne. Like, why haven't you got an Instagram account, right? Share my age a little bit there. But thanks for coming on, and we'll catch you on the next one.
Kevin. Appreciate it.
All right. Bye for now.
Yeah.